Captain Ria Novak stood at the observation deck of the Arcadia outpost, her eyes tracing the rolling hills and dense forests of Proxima Centauri b below. The landscape was beautiful, too beautiful to be real, but something about the alien horizon always unsettled her. The planet's ecosystem was almost Earth-like, with thick greenery and sprawling oceans, yet there was an unsettling stillness to it all. A silence that seemed too perfect. A sudden beat from her wrist comm snapped her out of her thoughts. A message from her team leader, Dr. Elias Voss. "Ria, we've encountered something unusual. Coordinates attached. Come at your earliest convenience." Ria sighed, clicking the message closed. The uneasy feeling settled deeper. Unusual. That word had been coming up more often lately, from every corner of the colony. Unusual weather patterns, strange animal behaviors, data anomalies. It was all piling up, and no one had a clear answer. She tapped her comm again, calling in her officer. "Sergeant Malone, get the transport ready. I'm heading to the survey site." The comm crackled in her ear. "Yes, ma'am. Transport's at your disposal, Captain." Ria turned away from the window, her boots clicking against the metal floors of the outpost. As she moved toward the elevator, she ran through the mental checklist. The colony was still young, and every discovery, no matter how small, carried weight. They'd only been here for a few months, still in the initial phase of settlement, trying to understand the land and secure vital resources. Any misstep could be catastrophic. The transport hummed to life a few minutes later, lifting off the smooth landing platform, and Ria settled into her seat, staring out at the desolate wilderness beyond the colony's walls. The world was new, raw, unclaimed. When the transport arrived at the site, the first thing Ria noticed was the silence. No wind, no chirping of the local fauna, just the oppressive, heavy stillness. They had found something hidden in the dense forest, a perfectly symmetrical formation of rocks, arranged in an unnatural shape. It wasn't just the symmetry that disturbed her, though. It was the texture. The rocks were different from the surrounding terrain, slick and smooth, with an iridescence that caught the low, distant sun in strange ways. Dr. Voss, a lean figure in his mid-40s with sharp, observant eyes, stood beside the formation, tapping at his data pad. "It's not natural, Ria," he said, his voice tight with concern. She knelt beside the formation, inspecting the rock closely. "How do you mean?" He showed her his tablet. A 3D scan of the site popped up. It was wrong. The rock, when analyzed, showed signs of geometric patterning, faint but distinct. "This structure, if it is a structure, isn't of natural origin. It's been shaped, perhaps even engineered. And it's older than anything we've found here." Ria's mind raced. The first colonists had come to Proxima Centauri b in search of a new beginning, but they hadn't expected to find this. Ancient, artificial formations on a planet they believed to be untouched. She scanned the surrounding area, taking in the dense trees, the rocky hills, the alien sky. Could this be proof of intelligent life? Or was it a remnant of something that had long since disappeared? The ground suddenly trembled beneath their feet, a faint rumble that sent a chill down her spine. "Did you feel that?" Voss asked, his hand instinctively reaching for the side of the formation. "I felt it," Ria replied, eyes narrowing. "Get the team together. I want to secure the area. Now." Before they could react further, another tremor shook the ground, this one stronger, sending a cascade of rocks tumbling down from a nearby cliff. Ria instinctively pulled Voss back. The ground was alive, shifting under their feet. She looked up, feeling a heavy, oppressive weight in the air. The tremors subsided as quickly as they'd started, but the unease lingered, thick and suffocating. Ria keyed her comm. "Malone, get a seismic reading. I want a full report on this." Her voice was steady, but she could feel her pulse quicken. This was too much too soon. "Copy that, Captain," Malone responded. Ria exhaled sharply. "Voss, what do you think?" Voss glanced at the formation, his expression tight. "I think it's not just a structure. There's something about this place, it feels wrong." She nodded. "Stay sharp." We need to get to the bottom of this before someone else gets hurt. Later that evening, back at Arcadia, the first reports started to come in. The tremors had been minor, but unsettling enough to warrant further investigation. No major damage had occurred, but Rhea could feel the tension in the air. Even the steady hum of the outpost's engines felt somehow different tonight, like the whole place was waiting for something. The door to her office slid open, and Sergeant Malone stepped in, holding a datapad. "Captain," he said, his tone measured. "We've found something strange." Rhea raised an eyebrow. "Strange how?" Malone showed her the screen. It was a live feed from the area near the formation. The footage was shaky, but it showed something that made her blood run cold. A shadow, moving quickly, too quickly to be anything human. The figure darted in and out of view, a fleeting shape that didn't belong. This was captured just before the tremor hit. "It's not a person, Captain," Malone said quietly. "We don't know what it is, but we're going to need more eyes on this." Rhea stared at the screen, her mind whirling. The strange figure, the tremors, the unnatural formation, it couldn't all be a coincidence. Something was out there, and it wasn't happy with their presence. She looked up from the datapad, her expression hardening. "Prepare the team. We're going back tomorrow. This isn't over." Malone nodded. "Understood, ma'am." Rhea's gaze shifted to the map of Proxima Centauri b, sprawled across the wall in front of her. The planet's mysteries were starting to surface, and with each discovery, it felt less like they were settling here and more like they were intruding. If this was the beginning of something more, they were already in too deep. And there was no turning back now. The next morning, Rhea stood at the edge of the formation, the rising sun casting long shadows across the dense forest. The previous day's tremors had left the area eerily quiet, and though the air was thick with humidity, a sense of anticipation seemed to hang over everything. They were no longer exploring, they were intruding. And the land was starting to react. Dr. Voss stood by the formation again, his eyes scanning the dense underbrush, but his focus was fixed on something deeper. "I've been reviewing the data," he said, not looking up. "The composition of these rocks, they aren't native to the region. They've been artificially altered. I'm not sure by who or what, but this is deliberate." Rhea nodded slowly, her mind racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone, was watching them. The mysterious shadow from last night's footage played through her mind like a loop. She'd reviewed it over and over in her quarters, but it never gave up its secrets. Too fast. Too strange. "We need to know what's inside that structure," Rhea said, her voice steady but tense. "Dr. Voss, I want full scans of the area. Every inch." Voss shot her a quick glance, then returned to his datapad. "Already doing that, Captain. I've sent out the preliminary scan results. There's definitely more under the surface. But it's too deep to get any meaningful data without digging." Rhea's hand instinctively went to the comb on her belt. "Sergeant Malone, prep the excavation team. I want to start digging today." "Understood, Captain." Malone's voice came through immediately, steady and crisp. "We'll have a team ready within the hour." Rhea turned to survey the surrounding woods once more. She felt it again, that uneasy stillness in the air, the kind that pressed on the chest. This wasn't just exploration. This was contact. The crew arrived shortly, and work began immediately. As they worked to set up the excavation equipment, Rhea stood back and observed, trying to shake the gnawing feeling that something was about to happen. The tension in the air was palpable. There were more whispers among the team now, nervous glances exchanged between crew members. Proxima Centauri b had not yet revealed its secrets, but its silence spoke volumes. By midday, they had managed to clear the first layer of rock, revealing what seemed to be a narrow tunnel that descended beneath the formation. The walls of the tunnel were smooth, as if shaped by an unseen hand. It was unlike anything they had encountered on Earth. "We've got something," Voss said, his voice laced with excitement. "This tunnel, it leads somewhere. And it's not natural. Look at these markings." Rhea crouched down beside him, studying the strange symbols etched into the walls of the tunnel. They were unfamiliar, sharp, angular shapes that seemed to pulse with a faint light, their edges glowing with an eerie, phosphorescent hue. "This isn't just some cave system," Rhea murmured. "This is a doorway." "Exactly," Voss said, nodding. "We've been looking at this all wrong. This is a construction, not a natural formation. And it's far older than anything we could have imagined." Rhea stood up straight, her mind spinning. Every instinct she had screamed at her to proceed with caution, but the pull of the unknown was too strong. This could be humanity's first contact with another intelligent species, and they needed answers. The excavation team quickly set up lights and began digging further down the tunnel. The air grew heavier as the ground seemed to shift beneath their feet once more. It was as if the planet itself was alive, breathing with them. As they ventured deeper, the sense of unease became almost unbearable. The walls of the tunnel felt too close, the shadows too long. Something was wrong, and yet they pushed forward. They had no choice. The desire to uncover the truth was overwhelming. Suddenly, there was a loud clang as one of the diggers' tools hit something solid. The crew paused, holding their breath. Rhea stepped forward, signaling for the team to be careful. A deep, resonating hum filled the air, a vibration that seemed to rattle the bones, coming from within the structure itself. "Is that coming from the tunnel?" Sergeant Malone asked, his voice tight. "I think it's coming from below us," Rhea said, her voice barely above a whisper. The sound grew louder, intensifying as they moved further down the shaft. A low rumble, almost like a growl, echoed from deep within the bowels of the tunnel. Rhea's heart skipped a beat. This was no natural phenomenon. This was something else. Something alive. "Captain!" Voss's voice broke through the tension. "Look at this." He pointed toward the tunnel floor. There, embedded in the stone, was a series of strange, crystalline objects, pulsing with an unnatural light. They looked like nothing Rhea had ever seen before, organic yet mechanical. Alien. Rhea crouched beside them, her fingers hovering just above the surface. They thrummed with energy, a silent pulse that seemed to resonate with her very being. "What are they?" she murmured, more to herself than to Voss. "Hard to say," Voss replied, tapping at his tablet. "But I've never seen anything like this in any of the research data. It doesn't match any known element or material on Earth, or any other planet, for that matter." The hum grew louder still, vibrating the air around them. Rhea felt it in her bones, deep and unsettling. The sound was almost like a warning, and it was becoming harder to ignore. The silence that had once felt so foreboding had turned into something else, a presence. Something was waiting for them. The entire excavation crew froze as the hum reached a deafening pitch. The ground shook once more, this time much stronger than before. A deep crack ran along the tunnel floor, and the crystals began to pulse in time with the vibrations. Rhea's gut twisted with fear. This wasn't a discovery anymore, it was an awakening. "We need to pull back," Rhea ordered sharply, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Now!" But before they could retreat, a massive tremor tore through the tunnel. The crystals erupted in a blinding flash, the energy released in a pulse that sent the entire team stumbling backward, their vision momentarily blurred. The light was almost too bright to bear, and for a moment, Rhea thought she saw movement, figures, shapes, darting just out of her sight, moving in sync with the pulse. And then, as suddenly as it had come, the light vanished. The tunnel was quiet again. Too quiet. Rhea, heart pounding, scrambled to her feet. "Is everyone okay?" she asked, her voice tight. The team nodded, shaken but unharmed. Voss's eyes were wide, his face pale. "That wasn't just a tremor. It was a response." "A response from what?" Rhea's voice was low, laced with suspicion and fear. "I don't know," Voss whispered. "But I think we've just made contact." Rhea stared into the dark tunnel, the weight of their discovery pressing down on her like a physical force. Whatever was on this planet wasn't just ancient, it was aware. And now, it knew they were here. Rhea stood at the threshold of the tunnel, her breath shallow, the events of the past few hours looping in her mind. The pulse of light, the crystalline energy, The figures that seemed to flicker at the edge of her vision, it was too much to process. Too much for any human mind to comprehend all at once. Her team stood behind her, equally disoriented but all acutely aware of the gravity of the situation. "Captain," Sergeant Malone said, his voice tense, "we can't just walk away from this. This is a discovery beyond anything we've ever imagined. We need to push forward." Rhea turned to face him, her eyes narrowing. She could see the drive in his expression, the same drive she knew was written on her own face. They were explorers, after all. But this was different. It was no longer about discovery for the sake of knowledge. It felt like a confrontation, an encounter with something alien, something far beyond their understanding. "No," Rhea said firmly. "We need to reassess. We've already triggered something we don't fully understand. We'll come back with reinforcements. We'll do this right." The hum, the strange pulsing energy, still lingered in the air, vibrating the tunnel walls. It felt like the planet was alive, aware of their presence. A low murmur echoed down the shaft, reverberating in the bones of everyone present. It wasn't just the aftershock of their digging. This was something else, something intelligent. The rest of the crew murmured in agreement, though their faces were etched with frustration. They wanted answers, just as Rhea did. But the risk was too high now. The uncertainty gnawed at her, pulling at her resolve. She turned back to the formation, which was now almost entirely uncovered. The tunnel stretched into the depths, impossibly smooth, too perfect to be natural. The crystalline structures, still faintly glowing, pulsed in rhythm with the tremors beneath them. Whatever this place was, it wasn't just abandoned. It was waiting for something. Or someone. "We'll set up a perimeter," Rhea ordered. "No one moves forward until we've secured the area and gathered more data. This needs to be handled with extreme caution." The crew fell into motion, setting up surveillance equipment and marking the area for further analysis. As they worked, Rhea's mind wandered back to the crystalline objects. She had studied their patterns earlier, but the pulsating light, the overwhelming energy they emitted, had made it nearly impossible to concentrate. It was as if they were alive, breathing, waiting for something. Dr. Voss approached her, his face pale, his usually calm demeanor slipping. "Captain, I think I know what these are. I've been running the data through the system. They're not just organic. They're engineered. These crystals, they're energy conduits. But the kind of energy they produce is unlike anything we've seen before." Rhea's eyes narrowed. "You mean they're a form of technology? But what could be advanced enough to create something like this?" Voss shook his head, clearly unsettled. "I don't know. The energy readings are off the charts, Captain. We're not just looking at a power source, we're looking at a method of controlling energy. Harnessing it in ways we don't even have the language for." Rhea's pulse quickened as the implications of his words sank in. If this was a power source, a conduit, then it wasn't just a relic. It could be active. And if it was active, then something or someone had to be controlling it. This wasn't an ancient ruin, left untouched by time. This was something that could still function. "Get a containment field up," Rhea said, her voice hardening. "We're not touching anything until we fully understand what we're dealing with. Let's err on the side of caution." Voss nodded sharply, his fingers tapping furiously at his data pad as he sent commands to the rest of the team. The air felt heavier now, the quiet so thick it was almost suffocating. It was as if the planet had fallen into a strange, suspended animation, waiting for something. Waiting for them. Hours passed, and the crew worked tirelessly to set up the perimeter. The scanners began transmitting data back to the outposts, but nothing concrete had been discovered yet. The energy readings were erratic, fluctuating unpredictably, and the crystalline structures continued their strange pulse, as if they were alive and aware of the human presence. By evening, Rhea's exhaustion had set in. She stood with her arms crossed, staring into the darkened tunnel, lost in thought. The gravity of what they had uncovered began to settle on her shoulders. If this was a power source, if this was something that could still function, then they had just stepped into the unknown. Into something that could change everything, whether they were ready or not. Captain! Malone called from the perimeter, his voice urgent. We've got something moving! Rhea's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean, something moving? Malone didn't answer immediately, but the transmission came through loud and clear on her comm. The footage was grainy, but there was no mistaking it, a shadow, moving in the distance, just outside the range of the team's lights. It wasn't human. It wasn't anything they recognized. A chill ran down Rhea's spine. She wasn't sure if the figure had been there all along or if it had appeared only now, but it was unmistakable. And it was too fast to be a person. We need to go back to base, now, Rhea ordered, her voice cold. Everyone back to the transport. Immediately. As the team retreated toward the entrance, the hum of the crystals suddenly intensified, the energy pulsing violently. It was as if the very ground beneath them was awakening, coming to life with a new purpose. And then, just as suddenly, everything went still. The pulse stopped. The hum ceased. It was as if the planet had held its breath, watching them. Rhea and her team rushed back to the transport, and the moment they climbed aboard, the engines roared to life, lifting off the ground. The formation, the strange tunnel, and the pulsing crystals were left behind in the dust, but the sense of being watched lingered, hanging in the air like a thick fog. Back at Arcadia Outpost, Rhea stood in the command center, her fingers tapping anxiously on the console. Voss was beside her, his eyes scanning the data that had been collected. Sergeant Malone and the rest of the crew had been debriefed and sent to rest, but Rhea couldn't shake the feeling that they had only just scratched the surface of something far bigger than they could understand. We're sitting on a powder keg, Voss, Rhea muttered, her voice tense. I don't know what that thing was, but it's not a random anomaly. This is a signal. Voss met her gaze, his expression dark. You're right. Whatever is out there, it's not human. It's not even from our galaxy, if we're being honest. Rhea's hands clenched at her sides. Then we need to figure out what it wants. Before it decides what to do with us. The outpost was silent. The future of the colony, the safety of her people, and the mystery of Proxima Centauri all hung in the balance.